1,000 years ago, a Norwegian farmer looked out at the sea and decided the ocean was not a wall. It was a door. That single idea would terrify 3 continents. We call these people Vikings, but that word did not mean who they were. It meant what they did. To go a Viking meant to raid. Most of these people were farmers, fishermen, and traders for 11 months of the year. Norway gave them almost no other choice. Picture the geography. Steep fjords, thin soil, long, brutal winters that swallowed half the year in darkness. You cannot feed a growing family on a mountainside, so the sons who could not inherit land looked at the water instead, and the water, it turned out, was generous to those who understood it. Around 793 AD, longships appeared off the coast of northeast England. The target was Lindisfarne, a monastery so remote that no one believed anyone would dare attack it. The Vikings did not know it was holy. They only knew it was undefended, and it was full of silver. A monk wrote that the raid felt like the sky itself had turned against them. In truth, it was just a few dozen men with a shallow draft boat and nothing left to lose at home. That shallow draft was the real weapon, not the axe, the hull. A Viking longship needed barely a meter of water to float. It could land on any beach, sail up any river, vanish before soldiers even arrived. European kingdoms built armies to fight other armies on open fields. Nobody built a coast guard for a boat that could appear out of nowhere. So Norway's answer to poor farmland became Europe's 400-year nightmare. But raiding was never the whole story, and it is the part most documentaries stop at. The same ships that burned monasteries also carried something else. Cargo. Walrus ivory from the Arctic, furs from the north, amber, timber, and quietly, enslaved people taken in those very raids. Viking trade routes stretched further than most people ever guess. Norwegian sailors reached Constantinople by rowing down Russian rivers, trading with the Byzantine Empire itself. Arab silver coins, called dirhams, have been dug out of the ground in Norway by the thousands. A farmer in a Norwegian fjord could own money minted in Baghdad. Think about how far that coin traveled to end up buried in someone's yard. This was not a culture of mindless destruction. It was a culture built entirely around one skill, crossing distance no one else could cross. And nowhere is that clearer than in what they did west, into open, unmapped ocean. Around 870 AD, Norwegian settlers reached Iceland, a volcanic island with no native population and no easy way home. They brought livestock, timber, and entire families. This was not a raid. This was a one-way commitment. A century later, a man named Eric the Red was exiled from Iceland for manslaughter. He sailed further west and found a land of glaciers and rock. He named it Greenland, not because it was green, because he needed settlers to follow him. And nobody moves to a place called Iceland Part 2. It worked. Colonists came. And from Greenland, his son Leif Erikson pushed even further west, landing on the coast of North America roughly 500 years before Columbus. They called it Vinland, land of wild grapes. There was no fleet, no crown funding, no empire behind this. Just a handful of families in open boats, guessing correctly about what lay past the horizon. Back home in Norway, This era of expansion was reshaping the country itself. For most of the Viking Age, Norway was not one nation. It was dozens of small kingdoms, each ruled by a local chieftain called a jarl. They fought each other as often as they fought outsiders. That changed with a man named Harald Fairhair. Legend says Harald swore he would not cut his hair until he ruled all of Norway. Historians are less sure that story is literally true. What is certain is that around 872 AD, Harald defeated the last independent jarls at the Battle of Hafrsfjord. For the first time, Norway existed as a single kingdom. Many chieftains who refused to bow to him did not stay and fight. They packed their ships and sailed to Iceland instead. In other words, Iceland was partly settled by Norwegians running from their own king. Norway's unification did not end the Viking Age. If anything, it organized it. Kings needed loyalty, and loyalty needed to be paid for in silver and land, and both of those still came from the sea. For 2 more centuries, Norwegian fleets kept pushing outward into Scotland, Ireland, the Isle of Man, and deep into what is now Russia. Dublin itself was founded as a Viking trading base. But every expansion has an ending, and this one ended the same way most of history does. Quietly, and later than the popular version admits. Christianity had been creeping into Norway for generations through trade contact with the rest of Europe. King Olaf Tryggvason, and later Olaf Haraldsson, pushed conversion hard, sometimes with the same violence once reserved for enemies abroad. By the mid-11th century, Norway was officially a Christian kingdom. The old religion, the old raiding culture, and the old decentralized power of the jarls all faded together. Historians usually mark 1066 as the symbolic close of the Viking Age. That year, King Harald Hardrada of Norway invaded England, hoping to claim its throne. He was killed at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Weeks later, William the Conqueror, himself descended from Vikings who had settled in France, invaded the same island and won. The Viking Age did not end with the Vikings losing. It ended with their descendants becoming kings by entirely different means. So what actually made this small, cold, mountainous country capable of reaching Baghdad, Byzantium, and North America centuries before anyone thought that was possible? It was not numbers. Norway's entire population was a fraction of a single modern city. It was not wealth. They had none of it, at least not at first. It was a hull design, a willingness to leave, and a landscape that left no other option. Poor soil pushed people onto water. Water turned out to be the one place medieval Europe had left completely undefended. And for 400 years, a nation with barely enough farmland to feed itself quietly redrew the map of the known world. That is the real Viking story. Not horned helmets, not mindless slaughter. A cold, narrow country that ran out of land and built the boats that got them everywhere else instead.